Well, hi, everybody. Welcome into Wisdom and Wanderlust Destinations. My name is Michael Bennett, co-founder of ExplorerX, and on behalf of our entire team, Amanda and Robin, who are with us today, and the rest of the team that was not able to make it, we're really excited to have you with us today. And even more excited to have our colleague, friend, and partner, Vessi Hulic in Croatia join us today as well. Before we start our conversation with Vessi, just a little bit about ExplorerX, if you're not sure who we are. We are a Seattle-based travel design company. We are founded on the principle and the idea and the concept that when we travel better, we begin to live better. And you can learn a lot more about what that means and how we do that and our approach to all of that on our website. Almost everything we do is custom travel. So, and that tends to take one of two different forms. One is what we call custom journeys, where someone comes to us and says, hey, I'm really excited about Croatia. I want to travel there. Here's when I can go. Here's the kinds of things I want to do. And then Robin or Amanda or I will work really closely with you to design a trip around your desires and time frame and budget and all of that. The other program that we have been, that's been gaining a lot of steam lately is called Destination Unknown, which is where you come to us and say, here's where I can travel, and here's the kinds of things I like to do. And then we pick a destination for you, maybe Croatia, maybe not. And you won't know where you're going until you get to the airport. There's a few different iterations and versions of that, which again, you can learn more about on our website. But that's becoming really popular this year. So a couple different ways to engage with us. So again, learn more on our website. It's explorer-x.com. And if you have any questions, you can always email us at hello@explorer-x.com. Before we get started, I'm going to let Robin do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll jump into our conversation with Vessi.
Hey, everyone. So yeah, just a little bit of housekeeping from me before we get started. We are keeping this to an hour. And we will be recording this for everyone who can't be here live, and we will be sending that out after. And please make sure you all are on mute for the presentation. And if you can pose, if you have any questions, you can pose those into the chat, and then I'll be monitoring those throughout. And then we will also save a little bit of time at the end to go over any other questions that come up. And I think that's all from me.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin. Vessi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's super exciting to see all those amazing people joining and wanting to hear about Croatia. So I'm a bit, super excited to share my knowledge.
Yeah, well, you are one of the most knowledgeable people I know, so this will be a fun conversation. And I will tell you, we do these often. We typically get 5 to 10 people that show up. So the fact that we have probably close to 20 that are here with us live today is a good sign that Croatia is atop many people's travel lists. So cool. Before we dive in, maybe just take a few minutes to tell everybody here who you are and what you do, and just kind of introduce yourself a little bit.
Absolutely. So my name is Veselka Hulic. Most of my friends call me shorter, like Vesi or Vesa. So you will hear Michael with all the alternations of my short name. Born and raised in Croatia, which I guess you can already tell by my accent, which I try to control, but it's really difficult to hide. As well, I'm living in Split currently, but originally I'm from one of most favorite Croatian islands, which is called Hvar. And I have been in travel business practically since all my life. I usually make jokes that it's in my DNA. Since even when growing up, my parents used to have like a small B&B, bed and breakfast, where, as soon as I was able to start helping, it was part of my tasks. So, starting from there, slowly building my career into tour operator and DMC to deliver amazing experiences to our travelers while in Croatia. And yeah, Michael, I'm sure you will ask all the right questions, because if you just let me blab, that conversation can go in so many different ways.
I mean, we'll talk about silver rockets and welcome to the jungle. And
You know, and tomatoes and the
Yeah.
important stuff, you know.
The important things. Yeah, exactly. So cool. So cool. It's awesome to be here. And we met, I think it was it at the Emotions Conference or something or Traveler Made back in 2018. And we became fast friends. And for those watching, we had Vessi and I had a chance to travel together through Croatia this past October.
Okay, how are you?
And that was a ton of fun, and I learned just enough to be dangerous about the country.
Yeah, I am here. I have a 2:00 dentist appointment.
I'm gonna mute John there. There we go. Awesome. And anyway, it was a ton of fun. I'm sure we'll touch on some of the things that you and I explored together while I was there. But let's start really high level. For those of us who may be a little unsure about exactly where Croatia is, let us know where Croatia is in the world, please.
So when we talk to generations that might be slightly older than both of us, most of them might be familiar with the term Yugoslavia, right? Because Croatia used to be one of the Yugoslavian republics. In early 90s, when Yugoslavia fell apart, Croatia became independent republic and independent country. So suddenly there we are, nobody ever heard of us, and we had to rebrand and build our existence practically from scratch. Speaking geographically, Croatia is settled between Hungary, Slovenia, another ex-Yugoslavian country, Bosnia, another ex-Yugoslavian country, but we also share the entire length of Adriatic with Italy. So we border with Italy a lot. So if you think about Italy, I'm sure that most of you as travelers are super familiar where that country is, because it's definitely one of the favorite countries for you guys. Croatia is just on the opposite side of Adriatic. And it's actually so close that in 2019, me and my friends kayaked across Adriatic to Italy. So just to give you a little bit of distances and ideas, it took 5 days, okay? It's not in a day. In terms of climate and food and everything, Croatia is very regional, but let's say that the coastal part is very Mediterranean. So very kind of Italian feel as well in terms of food. The temperatures are milder than on the coastal part of the country. We normally don't get snow on the coast, but we do get it in the inland, like in the capital of Zagreb, Plitvice National Park, for example, that probably many heard of it. They can get snowy, while on the islands, if we see snow, it's a super rare occasion. Does this help?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. It's perfect. And I want to dive into the different regions, and you and I had a chance to explore several of them, and I think we kind of want to dive into some of the more popular places and the not so popular but still really, really amazing parts of Croatia as well. Before we do that, how would you describe Croatia? Like, what are the most popular, or the themes, or the words, or the things that most people really think about, or that you think about when you think about Croatia?
The first thing which is on my mind when I mention Croatia is actually how small it is, but also how versatile and different it is. You had the chance of experiencing a bit of it because, the trip is short. But even in that short amount of time, you traveled through several different regions. And I'm sure that you experienced how people could be different, how food could be different, how architecture could vary, that it's not exactly the same. So the deeper you go, the more layers you discover, you really see how that regional component really plays a huge role within Croatia. So people often are surprised because initially when you have somebody starting to plan a trip to Croatia, they say, oh, it's a tiny country, 1 week, it's more than enough. And then they're in Croatia and they see that with 1 week, they can't really do a lot. particularly if they want to include islands, because if you're traveling to Croatia and not visiting at least one island, you're, missing out. It's definitely worth adding it to the itinerary. So to summarize, like versatility and regionality, it's definitely my top idea about our little tiny country.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that was one of the things that struck me when I was there was that I want you to talk about some of the specific regions a little bit more here in a second, but in the north, it felt very much like Tuscany, right? Or Italy. And then we got more into the central area and it felt very much like, a Slavic region potentially, right? And then you get into the islands and it feels like maybe you're in Greece, right? And it feels very different. So it was really diverse. And as you said, I think that's one of the things that when folks think about Croatia, we try to, as best we can, as best their schedules allow, give them opportunities to explore all of the different things that Croatia has to offer, so walk us through. I mean, I know there's a lot of different areas here, but maybe some of the highlighted areas that you mentioned already, kind of walk us through maybe north to south, what they are and what you love about each of them.
So if we start from, let's say, Northern Adriatic, I would put it that way, not 100% accurate term, but in sake of better understanding. Up on the borderline with Slovenia and Italy, we have a peninsula, which is called Istria. It's amazing little subcontinent of Croatia, if I may say, because again, as mentioned before, it's another region so much different than Dalmatia or inland Croatia. Michael mentioned that it reminded him on Tuscany, which is true, since, even when you're traveling through Istria, there is a lot of Italian minorities living in that region. So often you would see a name signs like street signs and town signs written not just in Croatian, but also in Italian. I don't know if you have noticed that or if you do remember when we pointed out.
Absolutely.
We did a little bit of touring.
Yeah.
In terms of food, it's again something completely different that you will taste and try in Istria compared to the food which you might taste in other parts of Croatia. Istria is amazing because, if you want to connect Croatia to Italy and travel to two countries, Istria is a great sort of entry point to Croatia, because from Venice to, an example, Rovinj, another popular destination in Istria, it's about 3-hour drive, and then in summer, there are also ferries that you could reach from Venice to Istria direct. So these are kind of convenient entry points to our country to start exploring further if you have plenty of days ahead. And then if we move further down, I mean, the islands already start up from the Northern Adriatic all the way down to Dubrovnik and to the end. Like talking about the ex-Yugoslavia, Croatian coast is the longest, and we got all the islands, all the best stuff. So, we have it all. So if we start from the north to the south, it's said that Croatia has more than 1,200 islands. Not all of these are inhabited, like there are many small tiny islets that are just beaches and bays and shelters for boats and similar, not necessarily having villages or settlements on it. But of about 60 islands do have towns and villages and people living on these islands. So the northern part of the Adriatic, it has a bit more different climate, not as the Greek feel, which Michael said. They have more rain, on example. They could be more lush, depending again from place to place. And their dialects and customs are different than what you might experience further down the south. So Kvarner Islands, at my opinion, are really unique, not as maybe as popular for many US visitors, because, when you come to Croatia for 7 days or for 10 days or so, most of travelers want to see the highlights. So unfortunately, for you, that part in most cases, besides maybe Lošinj, would be sort of like off the beaten path. Like it would be something that you don't necessarily go to some degree. While most of the travelers who are visiting Croatia for a short amount of time, they would concentrate down on the southern part, and these are the islands of Dalmatia. So practically islands, an example like Hvar and Korčula for sure being two most popular among the others. And then the area between Split to Dubrovnik. This is sort of like a middle and a south Dalmatia, which has this Greek feel, which Michael mentioned, because the climate is warmer, the sea is warmer, the color of the ocean is more blue and crystal than further up north. So you definitely have this Mediterranean feeling when you travel in that area. Speaking about inland Croatia, the most prominent location for sure are the Plitvice National Park, but that's only one of the national parks in Croatia. I mean, there are 8 others, right? And Plitvice is the most popular, but there are several others worth visiting, especially if you like hiking. An example, my favorite, Risnjak, which is towards Slovenia in that part of inland Croatia. It's least visited national park in the country, and it's beautiful and it's amazing. And I often feel, you know, sad for people not seeing some of it hidden secrets. So just saying, you know, no matter that Croatia was told that, you know, oh, we know Croatia, we have seen and read about many things. There are so many layers that still could be discovered when you visit. And this is all on the way to our capital, which is inland and which is called Zagreb, which is also the largest city in Croatia. With its surrounding areas, it comes to about 1 million of people in that town itself, while Croatia, to mention, has about 3.8 million people living in the country. So a decent suburb of a New York or something like that, comparing to sizes. And then if we talk further about inland, there is this amazing region which is up on the north, bordering with Hungary, and towards the east with Serbia, which is called Slavonia. It's so off the beaten path for many of travelers and visitors to Croatia. Again, offers completely different feel, completely different cuisine, different national costumes, different folk songs, different sounds, different smells. But unfortunately, we still haven't managed to put it on the maps as often as we would love to, for various reasons. First of all, 5-star infrastructure or 4-star really hotels are missing there at higher level. So we are struggling a bit with it, but still worth visiting for sure.
You, a logistical question here before we start cruising through some of the other areas. Do you find that most flights, or is it easier for travelers to fly into Zagreb and then start from there, or is it equally easy to fly into Split or Dubrovnik?
Depends how many days you have and which region are you concentrated, like what are you wanting to visit. If you have 1 week and want to visit Dalmatia only, then Split and Dubrovnik make most sense as airports. I usually do advise to fly into one and fly out of the other. Either way, Split, Dubrovnik, Dubrovnik or Split. But often, because the flights are more convenient if they're booked from the same place in and out, clients do decide to book from Split or from Dubrovnik, and then we just build the itinerary accordingly. If they opt to travel, an example, to Istria, then Zagreb would make slightly more sense. Even Venice would make more sense than Split and Dubrovnik. Or if they have, let's say, 2 weeks, then starting in Split and ending in Dubrovnik, or vice versa, is something that gives you enough opportunities to see different parts of Croatia, with some moving around, packing, unpacking, yes, but not crazy rhythm.
And it's you said it's about 3 hours from Venice to Rovine, and then
Yeah,
it's
about 3-hour
3
drive.
hours from Zagreb as well, or is
Yeah,
that?
roughly. It's roughly the same distance. Yeah, there is a small airfield like in Istria. It's called Pula, but it's not always the most convenient one to connect with major hubs. You know, so for that reason, clients are often referring to either Zagreb or Venice rather than Pula. But it's also one of the solutions, because with that one, you're immediately on the Istrian Peninsula.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Tell us more about Split.
Oh, Split. Well, besides the fact that it's the second largest city in Croatia, now for the last 10 plus years, even longer. Oh my God, I'm getting old. It's
Love it.
sort of my base and my hometown in a way. It changed a lot. You know, when I first came to Split, I was in university. And in those days, Split was pretty much the traffic hub, you know, place where people would come just to grab a ferry to go to the islands, or place where they would land because of the airport and then move on to any other destination on our coast. And then in the last 10-ish plus years, it really turned out to be one of amazing destinations itself, you know, so people are really enjoying their stays in Split. So now from hub, it turned into destination where people choose to do like a day trip to islands instead of, you know, traveling to islands, staying there. They do a day trip to island. That's also another way to do it. But if you don't have enough time, okay, better something than nothing. There are plenty of experiences that were developed in the recent years for people to be able to do and to participate and to experience Split through different lenses, like from food tours to, you know, adventure tours to different variations of city tours, you know, from
The
deep in
history itself.
historic.
The history itself is fascinating.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, if we start talking about the history of Split, we can just dedicate one webinar to that for
Right,
itself.
right,
So we
right.
rather leave that aside. And, you know, when people are here, we give them all they wish to learn and hear, some more, some less. But absolutely, you know, once you're in Split, and then not just to mention, like, you know, everybody somehow focuses on the Diocletian Palace because it deserves, it's really the heart of the city. But if you're sort of like a history freak and you want to hear more, like when you start adding all the layers, all the different phases, and that came later on, like even after the Second World War, and then later in the Yugoslavian times and the 70s and the 80s, like all these add-ons to the city and its development, you really start to cherish it and to look it through different eyes. And luckily, today we have amazing guides offering like different parts of Split. You know, if you want the regular stuff, sure, let's do the Diocletian Palace and history, but we also have some amazing people who are willing to take you to places that are not necessarily on tourist routes, but still give you an amazing insight into the development of the town and why things are the way they are.
Yeah, you know, I almost found it to be a microcosm of Croatia, right? In general, I mean, it has this beautiful park, right? That's amazing. It's all on the water. The waterfront is incredible. The history of the palace, but also the rest of the history is amazing. And just, it's such a walkable city to just cruise around the cobblestone streets and pop into a cafe for a beer or coffee or whatever, or a bite to eat or whatever it would be. It was just, I really enjoyed it there, maybe more than I expected. I kind of thought it was a launching pad for the islands, as you said, but it was a lot more than that. And I certainly, you know, moving forward, generally encourage folks to spend at least 3 nights there to really experience all that there is before
I
heading
agree.
to the
I
islands
agree.
or whatever. Yeah.
And you know, it actually offers you an amazing setting for one of our favorite hobbies, and it's like people watching. Because all those bars on the promenade, it's just like you sit, you take your coffee and you enjoy for hours. And this is one of the things that I really, really love about Croatia. There is no rush, right? Because when you're in Croatia, you have your espresso, you sit at the bar and you drink and enjoy that espresso for as long as you wish. Because for us, that coffee moment, which we call let's go for a coffee, and your friend might grab a beer instead of coffee, never mind. It's more about the socializing and the social life and being in the moment with your friend or family or whoever is sitting with you than actually grabbing a mug with coffee and running to your, you know, office and, oh, I have to do this or that. It's opposite, you know, drinking coffee for not doing everything else. So, you know, I try to encourage our travelers when they're in Croatia, just slow down, sit, watch people, enjoy, have your drink for hours, and nobody's going to chase you out because you're there too long. So embrace it, because it's not too many places in the Western world that still give you that opportunity.
100%. And you certainly challenged me to slow down when we were doing that. I know I would get my espresso and I'd be done it in about 34 seconds, and then you're just getting started an hour later.
I still haven't melted my sugar.
That's right. That's right. I want to talk about the islands, but before I do that, I want to swing down to Dubrovnik, and so we can sort of maybe help people understand and compare and contrast the differences between Split and Dubrovnik. So let's hop down there, and then we can go back to the islands.
I mean, Dubrovnik is a planet for itself. Again, it was independent republic for a decent chunk of history, which again formed its customs, formed its traditions in completely different ways than what would be the case in Split or any other area in Croatia. So practically, Dubrovnik is sort of, again, one of those unique settings in Croatia. Like when you are there, like it's really worth seeing it, because, it's like out of dream. It's so well preserved and well recovered after our homeland war, because it did suffer lots of damaging during the bombings and other unlucky events. That it really, it brings you to the new dimension. And the only problem of Dubrovnik, because the fact that it is as special as it is, everybody wants to go there. So people are flocking to Dubrovnik. So often you are in very busy area during the season. So there are ways how to deal with Dubrovnik. There are ways when to go, how to see it. We advise that to our clients, but we also say, there are parts of the year when unfortunately it will not be as easygoing as we are hoping to have that. But still, if you're around, I'm definitely, again, unfortunately, yes, encouraging you, be one of those crowds who is visiting Dubrovnik, because really it's definitely worth seeing it. And if you have the opportunity, like the only thing which you haven't, seen, it's practically Dubrovnik from the ocean. So if you are in Dubrovnik and you have a chance to maybe go kayaking, or if you have a chance to go on a boat ride, seeing those city walls from the ocean again gives you an amazing perspective as well.
Yeah. How do you size wise, and I mean, do you find is Dubrovnik, how did Dubrovnik and Split compare?
Oh, Dubrovnik is tiny.
Is it?
Dubrovnik is tiny, and this is because it's, let's say, most popular destination in Croatia. Many foreigners often think that Dubrovnik might be the capital of Croatia, which is not the case. We said capital is Zagreb, which is up in the northern continental Croatia.
Yeah.
Split is the second largest city of Croatia with about 108-ish. Now it's even 160-ish. Its population is going down. 1,000 people living in Split area. And then in terms of Dubrovnik, I think it's about 50,000.
So very tiny.
It's very small. It's very, very small. Yeah. So except being popular, it's not a huge city, but nothing in Croatia is huge. I mean, I told you, we are all in total 3.8 million. We can all fit in few buildings in New York, the entire country.
Well, a quarter of that, a quarter of it is in Zagreb, right? And so, which is awesome. I know one of the things that folks are really interested in hearing more about are the different islands. So let's dive into that, and then I've got some other sort of deeper dive questions for you once we cover some of the islands.
Okay, so I will for sure start with my favorite. We can't miss that one. It's Hvar Island, and for years it appeared on different Condé Nast list as one of the most beautiful, like on the list among 10 most beautiful islands of the world. And it is for the reason, and it's again, Middle Dalmatian island, just an hour on a ferry, passenger ferry from Split, little less than 2 hours if we travel on a car ferry. But it's so worth seeing because, with today's perspective, people think that when they are on Hvar, that there is Hvar town and nothing else. Yes, the island and the town do share the same name, but it is just one of the towns. And when you go behind behind the scenes, let's say, to other small towns like Starigrad, an example, or Jelsa, or Vrbovska, or any of the tiny villages in this middle part of the islands, you again discover so much life, so much flavor, so much color, and everything is different than Town itself, which is magnificent and beautiful with amazing Venetian architecture, and it's, you know, intervened in my heart. But actually why I love the island as a whole, it's exactly the fact that you move out from that town for 10 kilometers, and you're seeing completely new vistas, you're having completely different stories, and everything starts to have more sense and more taste. And, you know, and islands in general, it's like you're in a small area, right? And the islanders often can be a bit particular and specific. Look at me, I'm the islander.
So you're an islander, right? Come on.
And stubborn and whatsoever, because, you know, our ways of living and life on island, it's not always the easiest one. So we all needed to find our ways on how to survive, to speak more basic. But then when you're starting to meet those people, when you start to discover their customs, when you learn the fact that every village has a slightly different dialect, that we as locals can distinguish my town from the next village, which is 5 kilometers away, because we don't speak exactly the same dialect. Yes, we can understand each other, but the accent is different. Some words are different. And, you know, the next village, so the next village again. So it's really that richness of heritage is mind-blowing when you go in these depths. And, you know, it's amazing when you have travelers who are curious, and when you are taking them around, and when you actually have opportunity to share all these stories with them and to enrich them for this knowledge. Because unfortunately, as we are all aware, often we have travelers who are just ticking boxes and not necessarily want to know or leave enough time to see places and actually to hear about those places. They might just, you know, rent a car, drive around, oh, this is nice, and let's move on. But they never actually give themselves a chance to get a local or a guide or somebody to spend part of the day to give them a deeper meaning, a perspective, a context of the place, which, you know, I'm a big fan of it.
Oh no, and that's
pointing that out.
That's the work that we do, right? It's you know, it's not hard for someone who wants to go online and book a hotel or a night in Split or Hvar or Dubrovnik or any of that, right? And they can do the sites and walk around on their own. But the value that you and I and companies like us add is taking folks not just into Hvar town, but going to the remote little restaurant up on the hilltop that's 20-minute drive through some town where there's a wedding going on, right? And having this incredible meal overlooking Starigrad, which I can't imagine any traveler would do, or most on their own, right? Or getting to meet some of the folks that you introduced me to when we were there, both in Istria, but also in Hvar, and getting to connect with the people, right, in a really deep and meaningful way, where you learn about that history and culture. And so it's that combination of we're on Hvar, we're in Hvar town, but we're also going off that path into other parts that really add that layer of context that bring the destination to life.
Yes, and this is also what I'm really preaching and encouraging, because it really makes the difference. It really changes everything, the way you travel, the way you see things. And this is the only way how you can come enriched back home. And that your trip to any destination, Croatia or any other, has a meaning, that it was a good investment by the end of the day, if you want to look it through bare numbers. And that it was not just a random hotels, and we just had an amazing time on beach. And what's special in Croatia? They have great gelato. Kind of answer. Yes, we do have amazing gelato, by the way.
And wines.
Oh yeah. Truffles are amazing. That's Istria. But as I told you, we also found truffles near Split. An amazing friend of mine and the supplier nowadays, who and her family is now doing truffle hunting out of Split. And I really like to encourage our clients to do that as often as possible.
We have a family of
we-
7 going and doing that in just 2
Yeah,
months.
soon. Yeah.
And so that'll be very fun.
Yeah, and it's really, really fun experience. And, you know, and talking about wines again, you
Yeah.
mentioned wines and I mentioned regions, because every region in Croatia brings that something particular to wines, like wine varieties, the grape types which they are growing, what's most prominent and popular in each region. It's again region, and it's again the question if it's facing south, if it's facing north, more sun, less sun, red wines, wine whites. It's a philosophy, you know. Again, we can dedicate a complete webinar just talking about wines.
Which is not I think not a product that most people think about when they think
Yes.
about Croatia, right?
Yeah. You know what's our trouble? It's the same thing with the olive oils. We have an amazing product, like amazing top end quality, like one of our okay, I'm proud now. One of girls from Hvar Island. So she's from Hvar Island, and she's also growing her olive oil, olive grows and producing olive oil. She now came back from a show, like olive oil show in New York, with a golden medal for her olive oil. So that's kind of big for a small girl from a tiny island, right? So I'm super proud of her. And then talking about that, there are many small producers who really get an amazing results with their products in terms of wines and olive oil, even cheese. Like cheese is also in some regions of Croatia a big deal. The only trouble, US, on example, it's a huge market. It's huge, right? And our producers, unfortunately, don't necessarily have quantities to satisfy the need of that market and to make like meaningful business and enough numbers for the importers. So this is why we are a bit on some specialized shop, delicatessen shop, but not something that you will find in common supermarkets, you know. And this is why often most of people don't know about it, because they are not in contact with it. But if you need some Croatian wines in US, let us know. There are a few distributors who can help you with that.
Side hustle and export business, right? Is that what's going on here?
Michael can assist.
Yeah. Sure. I'll be your importer. You can be the exporter. No problem. That makes sense.
He knows people who know people.
I know people who know people who know people. Yeah. Exactly. I want to leave a few minutes at the end for some questions from the folks that are joining us today, but I do have a few other maybe quick hit things here, questions for you. Vesi, we talked about some of the more popular regions and locations within Croatia. Are there any regions or cities or locations that we haven't talked about that are maybe a little bit more off the beaten path, but that you have a particular affinity for?
I did mention Risnjak National Park on the borderline with Slovenia, sort of on the borderline. I really like that area, and you know, some hikes there are magnificent. There is also Kornati National Park. Its popularity is slowly growing. Kornati is an archipelago of islands in the area between Zadar and Šibenik. That's again like the central coastal part. This is where we usually do some sailing trips, because, you know, it's just an archipelago without proper villages, no hotels. You can just enjoy it while sailing and relaxing there, and, you know, stargazing, swimming, and nothing else, just being there present in the moment and in the nature. And this is why I adore that park, because you feel like somewhere away, cut off in the wilderness, and yet you are not that far from the mainland and civilization. There are some other tiny places that I really love in Croatia. The only trouble is they are so hard to add them to the standard routes and itineraries unless people have like 3 to 4 weeks to spend. So yeah, because there is a lots of road and traveling back and forth to make it happen. So I just pointed out 2 that are sort of feasible, like it could be doable if people really want to add it to the itinerary. And then the others we can still leave as a small secret. And then eventually, if somebody's staying for long, then we can play with those as well.
One thing I'll say a few words about this too, but I think the part that surprised me the most, that was, you know, a hidden gem, were some of the, I think we were calling them the lost villages, both on Hvar, but also up in Istria. So say a little bit about those, because I think they're a spot that most tourists won't go to, but maybe travelers would go to with us.
Well, there are many. It's like you have had chance to experience a few in Istria and those few on the island of Hvar. But even around, on example, Split, around Zadar, around any major town like in the hinterland, you can find many of these small abandoned villages that are just a group of old stone typical houses where, you know, people were living, where they were taking care of their livestock and fields and farms, when the farms were still the way of living, when they were, you know, making their life out of farming, which changed a lot somewhere in the 70s and 80s during the socialist regime, right? When they were empowering more and more people from villages to leave villages and to move into cities for the industry and the new chapter in our history. So due to that, like, I'm often surprised not even knowing for all of those villages. And then when you wander out in trying to discover something, that you enter into the old abandoned homes and you still find like newspapers there, like from, I don't know, 60s, or you find, you know, old family photos, and you find their intimate personal stuff abandoned with layers of dust, layers of dirt. And it gives that really unusual sense when you're, you know, going through that, because you feel like you're invading into someone's privacy, but yet it's not, because it has been like that maybe for 30 plus years. And you would be surprised, as said, like how many of these we can find in Croatia. So for people who want to discover more of that, we have a lot. So just let me know.
I told you, I mean, it was look, I loved every moment that we spent in Croatia, but I think, you know, hands down, my favorite part, besides maybe the private boat back from Hvar to Split, was what was exploring these villages with you, you know, and some of the other, you know, friends that joined us. And there is an energy about them, right? You feel like you are stepping back through some kind of portal into this time warp and seeing these beautiful villages of 20 or 30 or 50 homes, that some of which actually people still live in, right? Which I found amazing, right? There were a few of them that they're the one that where we saw the wedding, right? You're like, oh, there's like 8 people that live in this village still, you know. If there's 50 homes or 60 homes, but there's only 8 people that live here still. And the stories that are, you know, behind that, and the history of the village and why it was abandoned. And even, I mean, I kept asking you, you know, 50 times, why doesn't some developer come in and buy all of them and all, right, and turn them into some kind of, you know, and the story that they've been handed down, you know, through generations and generations as inheritance, and now each home is owned by 30 people, right? So good luck trying to sell that, you know, to, you know, and that's one home, and then there's 40 in the village, right? So they sit there, right? But the energy of them and the beauty, and I don't know, I could go on for days, but that was my favorite part.
And you know, it's really what you said. It's like a portal, and it really brings you to that root of our tradition. You know, it's not artificial. It is what it is. Like, these are the places where you can really see our ancestors, where you can really gain a better understanding of our history and traditions. And this is where we have amazing stories as well to share, because now talking generally about all of those villages is really hard to focus on something particular, because each of these villages comes with unique energy and different story behind it, right? So as said, like, if we have clients wanting to discover deeper and find places like that, happy to do that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to do about 2 more questions, then we'll get into some questions from anyone who's here with us today. obvious question, but when do you recommend travelers visit? Best times, favorite times of year to visit, or times to avoid?
Okay, so I start with best and worst. It's the same. Because for many people, the best time to visit Croatia is July and August because of school holidays, kids having time off, and most of the European travelers are traveling in July and August, which means the hottest months, the best for beach and swimming, and the busiest months. So this is why I'm saying it's the best and the worst, because it's the peak season. Then going from the peak season, July and August, for me, the most favorite part of the year would be like May, beginning of June, late September, early October, because this is when things are still running and busy. The weather might not be super stable, but yet we are not in monsoon area, so we are not getting 2 weeks of rain. It's maybe rain for a day and then maybe a day of wind. It's a mix, but you can still have a sun, you can have everything. But it's really kind of nice temperature, nice colors, nice smells. So I'm always encouraging people, okay, May, beginning of June, late September, beginning of October, if it is when you can travel. Second half of June and first half of September became quite busy. So this, from shoulder season, what used to be like 15 years ago, became high season. So it's not peak season anymore, but these days around July and August actually are now called high season. Still very warm, very busy, with rates that can be significantly higher than in May. To be honest, like, you could travel in Croatia year round, but we do have this burden of being perceived as seasonal destination. So
Yep.
most of our visitors are coming from, let's say, early April till November, roughly. We are just having clients arriving day after tomorrow. So these are going to be our first ones for the season. And then it's going to stretch roughly until November. But honestly, if you're not dependent on seeing crowds around you, if you are willing to sacrifice some of the experiences that not necessarily all of the hotels and restaurants would be open, you can travel year round in Croatia and probably have better experience in the off season than in the peak season, for sure, because people will have more time to dedicate to you. They wouldn't be as rushed or tired as they can be in season, especially in the second half.
And just a quick anecdote, I can vouch for that. I mean, I was there the last week in October or so, and it was wonderful. Weather was in the 70s, low 70s, upper 60s, and so beautiful and sunny, and the sunset was still at 7 p.m. or 7:30 or something like that. So it was plenty of daylight, and the weather was warm, but there were folks there, but it wasn't crowded, and so it was a really, really nice travel experience. So that was, I would say September or even October would be a really nice time for folks to travel if your schedule would allow for that. So, last question I have for you, and then we have one question at least that's come in so far now. What are some common mistakes that people make when they're planning their trip to Croatia? Or any advice that you would give to somebody planning a trip to Croatia?
Well, I can't say that there are any sort of common mistakes. I haven't run into any that I can say, oh, this is just happening too often, right? For me, trip wrongly done is what we already mentioned. It's just like booking your accommodations and that's it. Like, okay, I'm now in Croatia and I have no idea what I'm doing here. That's already like a mistake. Without allowing yourself time to actually learn something about the destination. In terms of other details, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't say anything that's really sticking out.
Okay. The one thing I will add that I've seen a few folks that have approached us about travel to Croatia is they tend to want to bounce around quite a bit, and my suggestion is often give it an extra day, right? I know you think one day on Hvar is fine, it's not. Like, give it 2 days, right? I know you think one day in Split is fine, it's not. Like, give it an extra day, right? And so, and I'd rather folks, because there is so much to do, right? It is Split, it is Dubrovnik, it is, Plitvice National Park, it is Hvar, it's all of that, right? And so if people have
Especially
8
if you want
days,
to
they
add
want to do
more.
a day and a day and a day and a day and a day, and it's like, you're better, in my opinion, you're better off picking 3 of those, right? And kind of relaxing and enjoying each of them than trying to do too much and spending half your time in a car.
But this is the topic also we touched somehow at the beginning of our conversation when I said that, people are often surprised like how tiny we are, but then yet when you need to start exploring, then they realize like how many more days it could be good. So, sometimes we have people coming back because they want to see more. So yeah, I mean, looking at it that way as an issue, then yes,
Yeah.
we can put it in that box for sure. Yeah, I agree with you.
And I would just, my own take on this, and we have 2 questions that I want to ask you about from the audience is, if possible, right? I know it's not always possible, but if someone has the better part of 2 weeks, 12 days, something like that, if you were to say best of highlights, best things to do, I'd say 3 nights minimum in Istria, 3 nights in Split, 3 nights in Hvar, 3 nights in Dubrovnik, or maybe 2 nights in something like that, right? Where you get to see a little bit of everything, and maybe stopping in for a night in Plitvice, which is beautiful, although we didn't get to see it because it was cloudy and foggy and not the best weather. But
No, Michael, you had an amazing tour. Like
no, yes, of course.
Like I kept
Everything was
telling people,
perfect.
Michael, imagine that in front of you, you can see bunch of lakes and bunch of waterfalls because we couldn't see anything.
We did see them, but they didn't get
Later
the
it
glow
cleared.
because the sun wasn't out. Yeah, over there.
Later it was good, but when we started, you didn't really trust me, huh?
That's fair. All right, I have 2 questions here from the audience. One is, I know there was a change in the currency a few months ago.
Yes.
So say a little bit more about that, because I know that was a big deal.
So from the 1st of January, Croatia doesn't have its old national currency anymore. Now we run on euros, which makes traveling in Europe slightly easier, and you have less fuss with conversions and exchange offices. So it's euros here, euros in Italy, euros all over the place.
Got it. And that leads us to our second question, which came in from Taylor, who asked, how accessible is Croatia via train if you're coming from other parts of Europe and you don't want to necessarily fly?
Train, yeah, okay. So no matter how I love offering sustainable travel ideas, unfortunately, Croatia is still not the best place. Getting to Zagreb, on example, on a train from Vienna or from Ljubljana is what works. But then when you want to travel from Zagreb elsewhere down to Split, it will take you ages with unreliable trains, which are always late and takes forever to arrive to Split. And then that's it, like practically from Split to Dubrovnik, no more trains. From Zagreb to Istria, it's sort of still like unreliable service, not all the way that you can reach all the destinations. They're working on it. So I rather don't even mention train as a traveling option. Funny
Mostly by
anecdote.
car then, is that what you're
Yeah,
suggesting?
unfortunately, it's mostly by the car. Yeah, it's mostly rent a car, private transfer, all depending like how is your budget. But cars are definitely the convenient way of traveling. If you are traveling on a sort of shoestring, if I may mention that independently, like you might use buses, like local, like intercity buses. And these are quite okay. I mean, different companies, but it works, except the fact that we had conversation today that in Split, when you want to buy bus ticket, you have to have cash. Speaking about another point, Croatians still love cash. So credit cards, yes, in many places, but make sure that you always have some cash in your pocket, because you would be surprised where credit cards can be, not accepted. So just be ready for it.
Got it. And just a plug for the Silver Rocket, if anyone's on Hvar and they're looking for a car, let us know. It's got an
Don't
amazing,
mess with my rocket.
I mean, it's amazing. I love it. I love the Rocket.
It's the best.
It is, obviously. Robin, Amanda, or anyone else here, do you guys have any questions before we wrap up with Vessi today? And if you are on mute and you want to ask a question, feel free to just take yourself off of mute and jump in for a question.
I don't have anything. I thought that was great, Bessie. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Bessie, thank you so much. We will save this recording. We'll send it out to everybody that was here or that signed up. So even if you were not able to make it live, you'll still have access to this recording. We're going to post it on our YouTube channel as well. And again, if anybody has any questions about traveling with ExploreX or to Croatia, you shoot an email to us at hello@explorer-x.com. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, Betsy. Thank you so much. It's always fun to chat with you. Thanks for posting that in there.
Thank you for inviting me. It was fun. And as you know, I could chat about Croatia forever.
If we kept talking, I would either need another coffee or a beer, so no problem. So awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.